My name is Elena Morrison. I was 29 years old when I finally understood that being dependable in my family wasn't a virtue. It was a sentence. The kind that doesn't come with bars or locks, just silence. Yesterday was my birthday, not a milestone one, not 30, just 29, but still a day that existed. A day I circled quietly on my calendar weeks ago, knowing better than to expect anything, but hoping anyway. Because hope, no matter how many times it disappoints you, has a bad habit of coming back. My parents didn't call. They didn't text. There wasn't even a late night, "Sorry, honey, we were busy." Nothing. By 8 in the morning, I'd already been awake for 2 hours, answering emails from contractors, reviewing load calculations, and fielding questions about a structural redesign that had consumed 16 months of my life. The Lonier Plaza project, 35 stories of glass and steel rising out of downtown Austin. I was the senior structural engineer overseeing the redesign. The kind of job that doesn't forgive mistakes. The kind of job that earns awards, not applause. At 9, my phone buzzed. For half a second, my chest tightened. Then I saw the name. Trevor, my younger brother. No happy birthday, just a link. I tapped it. An Instagram post. A photo of him standing in his downtown loft, arms crossed, paint-splattered jeans, one of his canvases propped dramatically behind him. The caption read, "Big things coming. Grateful for the support. Art doesn't sleep." Hundreds of likes. Comments from friends, acquaintances, strangers. My mother's comment sat right at the top. "So proud of you, sweetheart. The world is finally seeing your talent." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I locked my phone and went back to work. That's how it always went. Trevor was 27, 2 years younger than me, and in my parents' eyes, perpetually extraordinary. From the moment he picked up a crayon, he was gifted. When he dropped out of business school to find himself, it was bravery. When he moved into a loft he couldn't afford to immerse himself in the art scene, it was commitment. When I graduated top of my class in engineering, it was expected. I was the practical one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need fuss. At least, that's what they told themselves. By noon, my coworkers had surprised me with cupcakes in the conference room. Someone had even brought candles. They sang off-key, laughed, asked me about the Lonier Plaza completion timeline, about what I was going to do with my bonus once it hit. They cared. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did, because my own family hadn't bothered. That night, as I drove to my parents' house for our usual Sunday dinner, yes, even on my birthday, I already knew how the evening would go. I always did. Their house sat in a quiet Austin suburb, manicured lawn, warm yellow lights glowing through the windows. From the outside, it looked like stability, like love, like nothing ever went wrong behind closed doors. I walked in with a bottle of wine. My mother glanced up from the kitchen. "Oh, Elena, you're here." No hug, no smile of recognition, just acknowledgement. My father was in the living room, seated in his recliner, eyes glued to the television. He lifted his chin slightly when he saw me. "Hey, kiddo." Kiddo. Trevor was already there, of course. Sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, one leg hooked casually over the armrest like he owned the place. "Yo," he said, "you see my post?" I set the wine down on the counter. I did. "Gallery owner says I might be getting featured in another showing soon. Bigger crowd, more exposure." "That's great," my mom said immediately, her voice brightening. "I told your Aunt Carol you're really starting to break through." Trevor grinned, basking in it. No one mentioned the date. Dinner passed the way it always did. Updates about Trevor's art career, his upcoming showings, the energy in the downtown creative scene. My father asked him about inspiration, about themes, about how capitalism was crushing creativity or whatever buzzword Trevor had picked up that week. When my mother finally turned to me, it was to ask, "So, how's work?" "Fine." That was all I said. Because if I mentioned that the Lonier Plaza redesign had just won a Texas Engineering Excellence Award, they'd nod politely and move on. They always did. If I mentioned the 16-month grind, the 65-hour weeks, the nights I slept with my laptop open beside me, they'd say I worked too much. When I once asked, 3 years ago, for help with a house down payment, just a loan, my father had given me a 45-minute lecture on fiscal responsibility and earning your own way. Trevor never got lectures. After dinner, my mother brought out dessert, a store-bought cake, chocolate, Trevor's favorite. She cut a slice and handed it to him with a smile. You need the calories. Creative brains burn energy. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I excused myself early. As I drove home, the city lights blurring past, something inside me finally shifted. Not anger, not jealousy, calculation. Because here was the thing my family never noticed about me. I don't miss details. I don't ignore patterns. I don't accept stories without numbers behind them. And Trevor's story, the sudden gallery success, the expensive loft, the constant art supplies, the freedom from consequences, it didn't add up. Artists struggle. I knew that much. So when he stopped struggling, I started paying attention. Yesterday was my birthday, the day I stopped being invisible. And I had a feeling that once I finished counting, measuring, and verifying what I'd been quietly suspecting for months, this family's entire narrative was about to collapse. I've always trusted numbers more than people. Numbers don't lie to protect feelings. They don't exaggerate to impress. They don't shift blame or rewrite history. If something doesn't balance, it doesn't balance, period. That's why when Trevor's life suddenly started looking expensive, effortlessly expensive, I noticed. At first it was small things. A new set of high-end brushes, a kiln rental he casually mentioned like it cost pocket change. The loft downtown, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, right in the middle of Austin's creative corridor. The kind of place where rent alone could crush someone with a stable income, let alone an artist who supposedly sold a few pieces here and there. Then came the gallery posts, the opening receptions, the catered wine, the professional photography. I didn't say anything. I just watched. 6 months ago, I was at a networking event at the Four Seasons. Engineers, developers, city planners, the kind of crowd where conversations orbit around infrastructure and money, whether anyone admits it or not. I was halfway through a mediocre glass of red wine when I mentioned Trevor in passing. Just his name, nothing else. The man standing next to me stiffened. "Oh," he said slowly. "You're Trevor Morrison's sister?" I turned to face him fully. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive watch. The confidence of someone who owned things instead of renting them. "Yes," I said. "Do you know him?" He smiled. Not warmly, not proudly. "Know him? No. But I know his work. Or his wall space, at least." That was the first crack. Wall space, I repeated carefully. "Downtown Contemporary Gallery," he said. "I'm Richard. I own it." I kept my face neutral, but my mind had already started moving. "Oh," I said. "He talks about it a lot." Richard chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "They all do." "They all?" "Exhibition artists," he clarified. "Talented kids, passionate, motivated, willing to invest in themselves." Invest. There it was. "How much?" I asked, pretending curiosity. "Invest, I mean." Richard glanced around, then leaned in slightly, voice lowering like he was sharing insider information. "Prime wall space runs about $1,800 a month. Includes opening reception, promotion, placement. We take a small cut if anything sells." "And how much has my brother sold?" I asked, my voice perfectly calm. Richard hesitated, just a fraction too long. "2 pieces," he said finally. "Small ones, a few hundred each." I nodded, didn't react. Inside, something cold and precise clicked into place. $1,800 a month. That was $21,600 a year. For the privilege of pretending to be successful. I thanked Richard, excused myself, and went home. That night, I didn't sleep. I researched. Public records first. Rental listings. Gallery contracts posted in forums. Reviews. buried under glowing testimonials from hopeful artists mentioning fees and exposure and long-term investment. Then I pulled bank records, not Trevor's. I didn't have access to those, my parents'. My father ran a small but profitable logistics business. His transactions weren't exactly private if you knew where to look, and I did. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of late nights, spreadsheets, cross-referencing deposits and withdrawals, matching dates, tracking patterns. What I found made my stomach go hollow. Monthly transfers, $2,200 every month, 28 months, from my father's business account to Trevor. $61,670. And that was just the beginning. Trevor's rent? $2,800 a month. Paid like clockwork. Art supplies, studio access, insurance, his car payment. Every mysterious deposit into Trevor's account matched a withdrawal from my parents within 48 hours. When I finished calculating everything, every dollar, every transfer, every quiet bailout, the total stared back at me from my screen like a verdict. $127,000. 3 years. That's what my parents had spent funding Trevor's art career. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Not because it was funny. Because 3 years earlier, I'd asked them for $20,000. A loan, not a gift. For a down payment on a modest house. My father had folded his hands and told me, "Elena, you make good money. You don't need help. It builds character to do things on your own." Trevor's character, apparently, required 6 figures. The Lonier Plaza project wrapped the same week I finished my investigation. 16 months of structural redesign. 16 months of 70-hour weeks, site visits, revisions, pressure that made sleep feel optional. My completion bonus was set to hit any day. $30 million after taxes. Money my family didn't know existed. They never asked about my work, never cared enough to remember project names, timelines, or what I actually did beyond engineering stuff. That ignorance was about to cost them. But I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who understood systems the way I did. Someone who hated financial manipulation as much as I did. I called Jake Reynolds. Jake was my colleague, my closest friend at work, and one of the sharpest financial minds I knew. Stanford grad, structural engineer by day, investment advisor by night. He read balance sheets the way other people read novels. More importantly, he had zero tolerance for family nonsense. His parents had tried to guilt him into funding his brother's failed startup years ago. He'd cut them off for 6 months. When I asked him to meet for coffee, he knew something was up immediately. "You look like you're about to tell me someone committed a crime," he said, setting his cup down. "Worse," I replied. "They did it with love." I laid everything out. The gallery, the fees, the subsidies, the numbers. Jake didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he leaned back slowly, a smile spreading across his face. Not kind, not amused. Predatory. "Your brother," he said, "is running one of the cleanest vanity scams I've ever seen." "He doesn't even know it," I said. "Doesn't matter," Jake replied. "Someone's paying for the illusion, and your parents are bleeding money to keep believing it." I told him about my bonus. His eyes lit up. "Okay," he said, "here's what we're going to do." And that was the moment I stopped being the invisible daughter who swallowed disappointment quietly. Because Jake wasn't interested in subtlety. He was interested in exposure. And the first step, he explained, was simple. "Buy something," he said. "Something so visible, so undeniable, that it forces them to confront a reality they've been ignoring for years." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Jake smiled. "Something expensive, something loud, something that screams success." I thought about my ignored birthday, about Trevor's cake, about $127,000 quietly disappearing into someone else's fantasy. And for the first time in my life, I didn't ask if it was too much. I asked how soon we could start. Jake didn't even hesitate. By the time I finished my coffee, he already had his laptop open, fingers moving fast, eyes sharp with the kind of focus I'd seen only when he was dismantling a faulty load model or exposing a contractor's inflated bid. "Okay," he said. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I crossed my arms. I don't want this to look reckless. It won't, Jake replied. It'll look earned. That's the difference. He turned the screen toward me. A spreadsheet, of course it was, already breaking down my finances. Salary, $140,000. Bonus incoming, $80,000. Savings, retirement, emergency fund, all solid, he said. You could buy something nice without blinking and still be more financially responsible than 90% of the people lecturing you. I exhaled slowly. So, he continued, what kind of statement do you want to make? I didn't answer right away. I thought about my parents' living room, my father's recliner, my mother's tone whenever she talked about Trevor's potential. I thought about the way they'd never once asked how much I made, never bothered to learn what my job actually entailed. I want them to question everything they think they know about me, I said finally. Jake's lips curved upward. Then we're going German. By lunch, he'd researched every luxury dealership in Austin. BMW, Audi, Mercedes, Porsche. He laid out options like a chessboard, explaining the psychology of each. He stopped on one listing, 2022 BMW M5 competition. Alpine White, 617 horsepower. Twin turbo V8. 0 to 60 in just over 3 seconds. Price tag just under 6 figures. Too much? I asked. Jake shook his head. Perfect. We didn't wait. At 2 deposit, $80,000. The Lonier Plaza bonus had landed. I stared at the number for a long moment. 16 months of stress, late nights, and responsibility crystallized into a single line of text. This money wasn't luck. It was mine. I texted Jake. It's in. Jake, meet me at BMW of Austin at 7. Wear something sharp. By the time I pulled into the dealership that evening, the sun was setting, throwing golden light across rows of polished metal. Jake was already there, leaning against his Audi, dressed in a tailored jacket that meant business. Remember, he said as we walked in, you're not buying transportation. You're buying a psychological crowbar. The showroom smelled like leather and money. The M5 sat front and center, immaculate, aggressive, unapologetic. A salesman approached us, mid-40s, confident smile, expensive suit. His name tag read Curtis. Good evening, he said. What brings you in? Jake gestured toward me. My friend here just completed a major structural engineering project downtown. We're interested in the M5 competition. Curtis's eyebrows lifted. Excellent choice. Would you like to schedule a test drive? No need, I said calmly. I'd like to buy it tonight. That got his attention. How much are you looking to put down? He asked. $65,000. Cash. Curtis blinked. Jake slid his card across the desk. She's the lead engineer on the Lonier Plaza redesign. Curtis's demeanor shifted instantly. Respect replaced curiosity. Oh, he said. That project's been in the news for months. 16, I replied. Months. Within minutes, we were seated with the finance manager, a composed woman named Patricia, walking me through numbers that didn't faze me in the slightest. Final price? $98,267. I signed without my hand shaking once. At 9:32 p.m., I slid into the driver's seat of my new BMW. The engine growled to life, controlled, powerful, deliberate. Jake followed me out of the lot. We headed straight for Lady Bird Lake. Austin at night is a city that likes to show off. The skyline reflected against the water, lights shimmering like proof of ambition. Jake pulled out his camera and went to work. Angle it toward the city, he said. Yes, right there. After 40 shots, we found the one. The M5 in the foreground, the skyline behind it. Me leaning casually against the hood, confident without trying. The caption came easily. Happy 29th to me. Dream car, dream career. Lonier Plaza officially wrapped. Completion bonus officially spent. I posted it. The response was immediate. Comments, messages. Congratulations from colleagues, old classmates, people who finally saw me as something more than the boring engineer. Jake read over my shoulder and laughed. Your parents are going to lose their minds. They didn't respond at first. Not a like, not a comment. Then, at 12:47 a.m., my phone rang. Dad. I let it ring twice before answering.